Welcome back to the frontier, travelers. Pull up a chair and turn up the volume, because today's journey will take us to the far reaches of the galaxy, where love is rare and danger is constant. If you appreciate good stories and the old code of honor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The Aethelgard Expanse was less a place and more an absence. A deep, starless wound in the fabric of the galaxy where light seemed to die and time itself held its breath. Men called it the Great Cosmic Desert, a graveyard where ships older and grander than Rusty's had vanished without a whisper. He'd been crossing it for 3 cycles, the only sound the low, steady hum of the Betsy's life support and the mournful cry of a guitar from a century-dead Terran musician. The music, a raw slice of Delta blues, was a ghost of a world he'd never seen, yet it felt more like home than any starport he'd ever docked in. Rusty Vance sat in the command chair, a throne of worn leather and scarred metal, his heavy, steel-toed boots propped up on the console. The flickering holoscreen cast a blue glow on his rugged face, highlighting a strong jaw that looked like it was carved from granite and the network of fine lines around his eyes. Lines etched not by age but by staring into too much emptiness for too long. He was a mountain of a man, wide-shouldered and solid. His tactical vest stretched taut over a chest that had seen its share of brawls and hard labor. A thick leather duster, a relic from a forgotten era, was draped over the back of his chair, its collar darkened with the oil and sweat of 1,000 different worlds. He took a slow sip of synth coffee, the taste as bitter and familiar as his own memories. The opening riff of Stormy Monday filled the cockpit, a sound of pure distilled soul that felt more real than the silent vacuum outside. It was a lament for lost love and hard times, a language he understood perfectly. Are we truly subjecting the ship's sophisticated audio processors to this again? A crisp female voice chimed from the console. The sound was perfectly modulated, with just a hint of condescension. It sounds like a domesticated feline is being slowly strangled over a series of discordant notes. Rusty didn't look away from the viewport, a dark canvas pricked by no stars. It's called the blues, Betsy. It's for when a man's got nothing but the road ahead and ghosts behind. You wouldn't understand. I am a Class 4 AI with a processing power of 3 zettaflops. I understand quantum mechanics, stellar cartography, and the precise thermal dynamics of a failing fusion core, the ship's AI retorted. The emotional resonance of a primitive mating call, however, remains logically inconsistent. A faint smile touched Rusty's lips, a rare event. That's because you don't have a soul, sweetheart. And you, apparently, have enough for the both of us, most of it steeped in cheap whiskey and poor life choices, she fired back. My diagnostics indicate your serotonin levels are consistently below optimal parameters. Perhaps you should try listening to a properly structured symphony. The mathematical perfection has been proven to elevate moods. I'll pass, he rumbled. The math is too clean, doesn't leave room for the mistakes. Their familiar banter was a shield against the crushing loneliness of the expanse. Betsy, with her nagging, sardonic, and borderline maternal personality, was the closest thing he had to a companion. She was the anchor that kept him from drifting away entirely into the silence. He was about to offer a comeback. Something about how she was the only woman who'd put up with him this long when the ship lurched violently. The sudden jolt threw his coffee from his hand. The heavy ceramic mug, a souvenir from a mining colony on Zephyria 9, clattered to the deck plates, its dark contents spattering across his boots. The blues music cut out, replaced by the jarring shriek of proximity alarms. Red lights flashed across the cockpit, bathing everything in a hellish, pulsing glow. Rusty's feet hit the floor, his relaxed posture gone, his entire body instantly coiled with tension. He was a predator in his natural habitat again. Report, Betsy. Meteor cluster? Rogue Gravwell? Negative, she replied, her voice stripped of its usual sarcasm and sharpened to a razor's edge of efficiency. No registered celestial bodies within 10,000 clicks. No subspace anomalies. All scanners are reading. Nothing. But something has us, Rusty. We're being pulled off course. He could feel it. A deep, insistent pull, like the invisible line of a cosmic fisherman reeling them in. It wasn't the brutal, tearing force of a black hole or the predictable orbital dance of a planet. This was something else. Something deliberate and unnervingly gentle. On screen, magnify Sector Gamma 7, he commanded, his hands flying across the console, his thick fingers surprisingly nimble as he overrode the automated flight controls. The engines whined in protest, straining against the unseen force. The Betsy, A ship built for hauling freight, not for fighting physics, groaned like an old man forced to run, the sound of stressed metal echoing through her old bones. The forward view screen flickered, the starless void wavering as the external cameras focused. Then, the image resolved into something that made the breath catch in Rusty's throat. Against the absolute black of the expanse, a shape was slowly materializing. It was vast, bigger than any ship he'd ever seen, bigger than most moons he'd orbited, and it was not a machine. The surface was a mosaic of craggy, crystalline plates that shimmered with a faint, pearlescent light, like the shell of some ancient reptile from a forgotten mythology. It was veined with deep crevasses, canyons that plunged into darkness, from which a soft, internal luminescence pulsed with a slow, rhythmic beat, like a colossal, sleeping heart. It looked like an island of stone and faint light, adrift in an ocean of night. "My God," Rusty whispered, his knuckles white on the edge of the console. "What is that?" "Analysis is inconclusive," Betsy stated, a rare note of genuine uncertainty in her synthetic voice. "Scans indicate a geological composition. Silicates, carbon compounds, trace metallic elements. But there are faint biosignatures, massive ones. Energy readings are consistent with a living organism, but on a scale that is, well, it's not in my database. It's impossible." The thing, the creature, moved with a slow, ponderous grace that defied its incomprehensible size. It wasn't hurtling through space, it was sailing, a living continent on an eternal silent voyage. As they were pulled closer, details emerged from the gloom. Towering crystalline structures that looked like petrified forests dotted its surface, some reaching kilometers high. A thin, shimmering haze clung to its back, a captured veil of gas that suggested a contained, breathable atmosphere. It wasn't just a creature. It was a world, a living, breathing world. "We're caught in its gravitational field," Rusty murmured, his mind racing to process the impossible sight. "But it's too weak to be natural for an object this size. It feels targeted." "The pull is focused," Betsy confirmed, her processors working furiously. "Like a tractor beam, but biological in origin." "I don't like this, Rusty. The Expanse is known for its ghosts, but this is something else entirely. This is a monster. My directives are clear. Sever the connection and get out of here. Now." He knew she was right. Every instinct, honed by years of surviving on the fringe of civilized space, screamed at him to fire the thrusters, burn the engines out if he had to, and run. This was the kind of mystery that got men killed, the kind of story that became a whispered legend told by spacers in dimly lit bars on desolate outposts. But then, something else came through the speakers. It started as a whisper beneath the hiss of static, a faint signal piercing the void. It wasn't a standard distress call, not the clipped professional plea of a stranded pilot using a universal frequency. This was different. It was a voice, a woman's voice, rising and falling in a cadence that was less like speech and more like a song, a melody of sorrow and desperation, hauntingly beautiful and achingly clear. It sliced through the cold, sterile environment of the cockpit and went straight to the part of Rusty's soul he tried to keep padlocked and buried. He leaned forward, his whole body still, straining to hear it over the blaring alarms. He slapped a button on the console, silencing the klaxons. In the sudden quiet, the voice was a silver thread of sound in the infinite darkness. It sang a plea, in a language he didn't understand, but the meaning was universal, as old as life itself. "Help me. I'm alone. We are dying. Betsy, trace that signal." "Rusty, no." The AI's voice was sharp, insistent. "My directives are clear. Avoid uncharted phenomena and unverified transmissions. This has all the hallmarks of a classic siren's call. Allure. It's a trap, designed to prey on the psychological weaknesses of organic beings." The voice grew stronger as they drew nearer to the leviathan, as if it was broadcasting directly to him. It spoke of pain, of a world failing, of a faith being tested. It was the sound of a heart breaking, and it reminded him of another voice, another time, on another world, another promise he had failed to keep. That was his ghost, the one that rode shotgun in his cockpit, the one no amount of distance could leave behind, the broken promise. "I know what a trap looks like, Betsy," he said, his voice low and steady, a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the deck plates. He straightened up, his decision made. The weariness in his eyes was replaced by a familiar, dangerous glint of resolve. The same look he got before a high-stakes card game or a bar-clearing brawl. And I know what a cry for help sounds like. He walked over to the weapons locker, his movements fluid and purposeful. He checked the charge on his heavy plasma pistol, the worn grip fitting perfectly in his hand. That is profoundly illogical, the AI protested, her voice bordering on frantic. The atmosphere is unknown. The surface is unstable. The giant space turtle might decide you're a tasty snack. My calculations give you a 93.4% chance of not returning from this excursion. Rusty holstered the weapon and pulled on his duster. The old leather settled on his shoulders like a second skin. His gaze was fixed on the impossible world on the leviathan's back, a world that should not exist, calling to him with a voice that felt too much like a chance at redemption to ignore. Then I guess I'd better be in that lucky 6.6%, he said, turning toward the airlock that led to the skiff bay. Get the landing skiff prepped. Rusty, I must formally object. This course of action violates 17 different safety protocols. Log the objection. He cut her off, his hand on the airlock panel. He paused for a moment, looking back into the cockpit, his sanctuary. Keep the engines warm, Betsy, and don't touch my music. The airlock door hissed open, and he stepped through, leaving the faint, mournful notes of the guitar to hang in the air behind him. The landing skiff, a rugged, snub-nosed craft affectionately named the Mule, bucked and rattled as it descended through the shimmering haze that served as the Leviathan's atmosphere. Rusty's hands were firm on the controls, his knuckles a stark white against the dark, greasy console. Through the viewport, the landscape below was an alien dreamscape, unlike anything he'd seen in his travels across the settled and unsettled arms of the galaxy. The surface of the great creature, Kharidda, as he'd later learn its inhabitants called it, was not barren rock. It was a terrain of living crystal and bioluminescent flora. Forests of crystalline shards, some as tall as skyscrapers, jutted from the shell-like ground, catching and refracting the faint ambient light of the expanse into a million glittering colors. Carpets of glowing moss pulsed with a soft blue-green light, illuminating deep ravines and strange geometric rock formations. The air, filtered through the skiff's sensors, was thin but rich in oxygen, with an odd metallic scent like ozone after a thunderstorm. Atmospheric composition is breathable, but I am detecting unknown airborne microorganisms. Betsy's voice crackled through the skiff's comms, a tether of logic in a world of impossibility. I advise keeping your helmet sealed. Noted. Rusty grunted, his eyes scanning the terrain, looking for a stable place to set down. He was a man who trusted his gut over sensor readings. He'd learned the hard way that technology could lie, but the feel of a place, the hum of its energy, never did. This place felt ancient, weary, and in pain. He found a relatively flat plateau nestled between two towering crystal spires, and brought the mule down with a gentle hiss of its repulsor lifts. For a long moment he just sat there, engine idling, taking in the profound alien silence. The haunting song-like voice that had drawn him here was clearer now, a beacon in the quiet. It seemed to be coming from a dense grove of shattered crystals a few clicks to the east. With a final check of his plasma pistol, he unsealed the cockpit. The strange, electric scent of the air hit him immediately. He took a cautious breath, then another. It was clean, crisp. He retracted his helmet, letting the cool air wash over his face. He preferred to meet a new world on its own terms with his senses wide open. Slinging a med kit and a coil of high-tensile rope over his shoulder, he stepped out onto the living ground. The surface felt warm beneath his boots. A low, deep vibration hummed up through the soles, a rhythmic thrumming that felt like the slow, powerful heartbeat of a sleeping giant. He was walking on the back of a god. He moved with the quiet, efficient strides of a hunter, his duster swirling around his legs. The glowing moss cast long, dancing shadows that played tricks on the eyes. The silence was absolute, broken only by the crunch of his boots on the crystalline ground and the distant, mournful call that guided him forward. As he drew closer to the shattered grove, the sense of distress in the voice became more palpable. It was a sharp, keening edge on the beautiful melody now, a note of pure, unadulterated pain. He entered the grove. It was a scene of devastation. Massive crystal shards, some the size of his skiff, were strewn about like fallen trees after a hurricane. The ground was cracked and fissured. Something violent had happened here. A tremor, perhaps. And there, at the heart of the destruction, he found her. She was pinned beneath a massive, translucent shard of crystal, her lower leg trapped and twisted at an unnatural angle. Her skin was the color of pale moonlight, so white it seemed to have its own faint luminescence, and it was adorned with intricate, swirling silver markings that traced the contours of her high cheekbones and elegant brow. Her hair was a cascade of pure white, stark against the dark, crystalline ground. She was humanoid, delicately built but with an air of profound strength. Even contorted in pain, she possessed a serene, otherworldly beauty. She was wearing simple, flowing robes of a deep indigo fabric, now torn and stained with a blue, iridescent blood. Her eyes were closed, her head thrown back as the pain-filled song escaped her lips. She hadn't heard his approach. Rusty slowed, his instincts warning him not to startle her. He cleared his throat softly. Her eyes snapped open. They were a startling, luminous silver, like pools of liquid starlight, and they widened in shock, not fear. The song died in her throat. She stared at him, taking in his rugged appearance, his strange clothes, the weapon strapped to his thigh. He was an anomaly, a creature of metal and leather in her world of living crystal and light. "Easy now," he said, his voice a low, calming rumble. He held up his hands, palms open, a universal gesture of peace. "I heard your call. Came to see if I could help." She watched him with an unnerving stillness, her silver eyes searching his face, looking past the weathered exterior, deep into the man beneath. A flicker of understanding, or perhaps acceptance, passed through her gaze. "You are not of this world," she whispered, her voice even more melodic when she spoke. It resonated with a faint, harmonic chime, like tiny bells. "No, ma'am. I'm just passing through," he said, his eyes flicking to the crystal pinning her leg. "Looks like you're in a bad spot." A spasm of pain crossed her features. The ground, it shook. "Kharidda is unwell." She gritted her teeth, her knuckles white where she gripped the ground. "My leg, I cannot move it." Rusty moved closer, his boots crunching on smaller fragments of crystal. He knelt, examining the massive shard. It had to weigh several tons. Brute force wasn't an option, not even for him. He needed leverage. His eyes scanned the wreckage, and he spotted a smaller, sturdier-looking crystal pillar that had broken off nearby. "All right, hold on. I've got an idea," he said, his tone shifting into one of practical confidence. It was the voice of a man who fixed things: engines, deals, broken situations. He retrieved the pillar, which was as long as he was tall, and wedged one end under the edge of the massive shard. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice tight with pain. "Oldest trick in the book," he grunted, positioning his shoulder under the makeshift lever. "They probably used it to build the pyramids back on Earth." He planted his feet, the muscles in his back and legs bunching under his clothes. With a deep breath and a low groan of exertion, he put his entire weight into it. For a moment, nothing happened. The crystal didn't budge. The only sound was the straining of his own muscles and the harsh rasp of his breathing. Then, with a grating screech of crystal on crystal, the massive shard began to lift. Just a few inches, but it was enough. "Now!" he yelled, the muscles in his neck cording with the strain. "Pull your leg out! Quickly!" With a cry of pain, she dragged her mangled leg free. The moment she was clear, Rusty let the lever go. It clattered to the ground, and the massive shard slammed back into place with a deafening crack that echoed through the silent grove. He stumbled back, breathing heavily, sweat beading on his forehead. He went to her side, pulling the med kit from his shoulder. Her leg was a mess, the bone clearly broken, and the strange blue blood was flowing freely from a deep gash. "Don't move," he ordered gently, opening the kit. He pulled out a canister of Instafoam, a sterile sealant and disinfectant, and a biosplint. She watched, her silver eyes wide, as he worked with a practiced, gentle efficiency. He cleaned the wound, sprayed the foam over it, which hissed as it hardened into a protective cast, and then secured the leg with the splint. Her people, he realized, likely had no medicine like this. Their world was symbiotic, natural. His was a world of tools and technology. "My name is Kharidda," she said softly, her gaze never leaving his hands as they tended to her. "Rusty," he replied, not looking up from his work. "Rusty Vance. You came from the silent void, Rusty Vance, from the darkness between stars. Why?" "Heard a lady in trouble," he said simply, finishing his work and sitting back on his heels. "Old habit." She finally looked away from him, her gaze sweeping over the devastated grove. "This is the work of Garax. He and his followers performed the ritual of sundering. They believe it will wake Kharidda from its sickness, but it only causes more pain. She looked back at him, her expression grim. They believe an offering is needed. A sacrifice from the outside world to appease the spirit of our home. Rusty's eyes narrowed. He was starting to get the picture. And let me guess. A stranger dropping out of the sky in a metal ship looks a lot like a sacrifice sent by the heavens. Kharidda nodded slowly. Grax will see your arrival as an omen. A dark one. He will hunt you. She struggled to sit up, a new urgency in her voice. You must leave. Now. Before they find you. Your presence here puts you in grave danger. Rusty looked at her, this beautiful wounded priestess in a world that was falling apart. He thought of his ship, waiting safely in the sky. He thought of the long, empty road ahead, the promise of credits at his destination. It was the smart play, the survivor's play. But then he looked at her silver eyes, filled not with fear for herself, but for him, and he remembered the promise he'd broken, the one that haunted his sleep. He had run once when people needed him to stand. He had chosen the easy road, and it had cost him everything that mattered. He wasn't going to make that same mistake again. He stood up, towering over her, a rugged silhouette against the glowing crystals. I'm not much for running, he said, his voice a low, steady baritone. Especially not when there's a job to be done. He offered her a calloused hand. Looks to me like your world is sick, and I've got some experience fixing things that are broken. I want to hear from you veterans. If you were in Rusty's shoes, would you risk it all for a new love, or would you stay focused on the mission? Write it in the comments below. I read them all. Kharidda hesitated for a heartbeat, her luminous silver eyes studying the hand Rusty offered. It was a big hand, scarred and calloused, the hand of a man who worked with tools and wasn't afraid of a fight. It was a stark contrast to the slender, unblemished hands of her own people, yet there was a steadiness in it, a promise of strength that went beyond the physical. She placed her hand in his, and his fingers closed around hers, surprisingly gentle. He lifted her with an ease that belied her weight, cradling her in his arms as if she were a child. The sheer power radiating from him was startling. For a moment she was pressed against the hard planes of his chest, the scent of worn leather, engine oil, and something uniquely masculine filling her senses. It was a scent of another universe, of steel and fire and distant stars, and it was strangely comforting. My village is this way, she murmured, pointing a delicate finger toward a pass between two colossal pulsating crystal formations. But we must be cautious. Grax's warriors will be patrolling. Let 'em come, Rusty rumbled, his voice close to her ear. It's been a while since I had a decent conversation. He moved through the alien landscape with a surprising grace for a man his size. He carried her as if she weighed nothing, his long, steady strides eating up the ground. Kharidda found herself watching the play of muscles in his jaw, the focus in his dark eyes as he scanned the terrain. He was a creature of pure, undiluted resolve. In her world of serene philosophers and ritualistic warriors, he was an elemental force. Their journey was silent for a time, the only sounds the rhythmic crunch of his boots and the deep, vibrating hum of Kharidda beneath them. The landscape shifted, the crystal groves giving way to a vast plain covered in the softly glowing moss. In the distance, a cluster of structures rose from the ground, organic and beautiful. They were woven from living, flexible crystal and shaped like immense, glowing seashells, all connected by gracefully arching bridges of the same material. The village pulsed with a soft, communal light, a haven of tranquility in the strange, dying world. As they approached, figures emerged from the glowing dwellings. They were her people, the Zilari, tall and slender like her, with the same pale, luminescent skin and silver markings. They moved with a dancer's grace, their indigo robes flowing around them. A murmur went through the crowd as they saw her in the arms of the outworlder. Their expressions were a mixture of concern for her and deep suspicion for him. An older Zilari, his facial markings more elaborate than the others signifying his status as an elder, stepped forward. Kharidda, what has happened? Who is this stranger? He saved me, Elder Vorketh, she explained, as Rusty gently set her down, allowing her to lean against him for support. There was a tremor in the grove. This man, Rusty Vance, freed me. Before the elder could respond, a new group of Zilari pushed through the crowd. These were different, taller, more heavily muscled, their robes replaced with harnesses of hardened crystalline plates. Their faces were grim, their silver eyes hard as chips of ice. Leading them was a Zalari who stood even taller than Rusty, his presence radiating an aura of disciplined violence. His silver markings were sharp and angular like lightning forks, and a long, wicked-looking blade forged from obsidian-like crystal was strapped to his back. This was Garax. The priestess consorts with the curse, Garax boomed, his voice a hammer blow in the quiet air. The great traveler sends us a sign, a blight from the void to be purged, and she embraces it. His warriors fanned out, their hands resting on the hilts of their own crystal blades, effectively surrounding Rusty and Kharidda. The villagers shrank back, their fear a palpable thing. Rusty didn't flinch. He simply shifted his stance slightly, placing himself more squarely in front of Kharidda, a silent, immovable shield. His hand rested casually on the grip of his plasma pistol. "He is no curse, Garax," Kharidda countered, her voice ringing with an authority that belied her injuries. "He is a guest, and a savior. He showed me kindness when our world offered only violence. His kindness is a poison," Garax sneered, taking a menacing step forward. His eyes locked with Rusty's. It was a primal challenge, two alpha predators sizing each other up across a deep cultural divide. Kharidda shudders in agony because we have grown weak. We have forgotten the old ways. The blood of an outworlder, a creature of metal and noise, will be the sacrifice that soothes our world and restores the balance. Rusty's lips curled into a humorless smile. "I've heard that line before. Different planet, same sermon. Men who talk about blood and sacrifice are usually just afraid of getting their own hands dirty with real work." Grax's eyes blazed with fury. "You dare." "Enough!" Elder Vorketh's voice cut through the tension. He stepped between them, a frail but respected barrier. "There will be no blood spilled here. Not now. The stranger saved the priestess. He will be heard. Grax, control your warriors. This is a place of peace." Grax shot Rusty one last look of pure hatred before giving a curt nod. He and his warriors pulled back, but they didn't leave, melting into the crowd and watching with hostile eyes. Kharidda led Rusty, who now supported her as she limped, toward the largest of the shell-like structures, the village's central chamber of communion. Inside, the walls glowed with a soft, internal light, and intricate patterns of energy flowed through the translucent crystal. In the center of the room, a shaft of soft light descended from the ceiling, illuminating a pool of shimmering, silvery liquid. "This is the heart chamber," she explained, her voice low. "It is where we commune with Kharidda's spirit. But for many cycles, the connection has been weak. There is a shadow, a sickness that our rituals cannot touch." She guided him to the edge of the pool and gestured for him to look. As he peered into the shimmering depths, the liquid swirled and an image began to form. It was a hazy, indistinct vision of a place deep within the creature, a cavern of pulsating, organic tissue, and embedded in the wall of that cavern was something hideously out of place. It was a machine, a complex metallic cylinder bristling with drills and sensor arms, unmistakably a piece of advanced technology. It was corroded and dark, but a malevolent red light still pulsed from its core. It was leaching energy from the living tissue around it, which was blackened and necrotic. "What in the hell is that?" Rusty breathed. "We do not know," Kharidda said, her voice filled with sorrow. "The vision came to the elders generations ago. A foreign object, a metal heart, burrowed deep into Kharidda's core after a tremor shook the void. Since then, Kharidda has slowly weakened. The tremors have grown more frequent, more violent. Grax and his followers believe it is a spiritual failing. They think blood will cleanse it." Rusty stared at the image, his mechanic's mind instantly analyzing, diagnosing. "That's not a curse," he said, a grim certainty in his voice. "That's a deep-core automated mining probe. Old corporate tech. Someone, a long time ago, must have mistaken this big fella for a mineral-rich asteroid. The probe drilled in, hit a vital organ, and has been poisoning him from the inside out ever since." The simplicity and sheer brutal logic of his explanation hung in the air. The Zalari elders who had gathered around them stared, their ancient beliefs clashing with this sudden mechanical truth. "It's a machine," Rusty continued, his gaze intense. "And machines can be fixed, or in this case broken." He looked from the pool to Kharidda. "If you can show me how to get down there, I can shut that thing off." A wave of murmurs and protests erupted from the elders. "It is forbidden. The inner paths are sacred and dangerous," one exclaimed. "The spirit of Kharidda would never allow such a violation," another added. Garax pushed his way to the forefront again, his face a mask of righteous fury. Blasphemy. He seeks to desecrate the heart of our world with his unclean metal tools. He is the plague, and this is his trick to finish us. He must be sacrificed now. His warriors tensed, ready to act. But Rusty didn't even look at him. His eyes were locked on Kharidda's. In that moment, the entire world narrowed to the two of them. He saw the conflict in her, the pull of her people's ancient faith against the logic of his words. He was asking her to trust him, a man she'd just met. Over a lifetime of tradition, the memory of his broken promise surfaced, sharp and bitter. He remembered another woman's face, another community in peril, another time he had offered a solution that went against the grain. They hadn't listened. They had chosen fear and tradition, and he, weary of fighting, had walked away. He'd left them to their fate, a decision that had carved a permanent hole in his soul. He wouldn't walk away this time. "Your rituals aren't working, Garax," Rusty said, his voice cutting through the noise, low and dangerous. "Your world is dying, and you're too busy kneeling to notice you could just stand up and fight back." He turned his full attention to Kharidda, his voice softening slightly. "I can do this, but I can't do it alone. I need a guide." Kharidda looked from Rusty's determined face to the fearful faces of her elders, then to the hateful glare of Garax. She had spent her life listening to the faint, pained whispers of Kharidda's spirit. She knew the sickness was real, a physical thing, not just a spiritual malaise. This outworlder, with his strange confidence and sad eyes, spoke a truth that resonated deeper than Garax's dogma. He was a risk, a gamble that could destroy them all, but doing nothing was a certainty of the same. She took a deep breath, her decision made. She would stand. "I will guide him," she announced, her voice clear and strong, silencing the room. She turned to Rusty, her silver eyes shining with a newfound resolve. "I will take you to the heart of Kharidda." The entrance to the inner paths of Kharidda was a narrow, pulsating fissure at the bottom of a deep ravine, a place the Zelari considered both sacred and forbidden. The air that wafted from it was warm, humid, and smelled of ozone and rich alien soil. It was like descending into the throat of a living god. Rusty went first, his tactical light cutting a sharp, white beam through the bioluminescent gloom. Kharidda followed, her injured leg wrapped tightly. She refused his offer to carry her, insisting she needed to walk these sacred paths on her own feet. Her pride was as fierce as it was quiet. He moved slowly, checking the stability of the fleshy, pulsating ground with each step, always staying close enough to catch her if she stumbled. The tunnels were breathtaking. They were not carved from rock, but were living arteries and passages, the walls lined with pulsing veins of soft blue light that illuminated vast cavernous chambers. Strange crystalline flora grew in intricate patterns, releasing spores of golden light that drifted through the air like fireflies. The entire space thrummed with the slow, powerful beat of Kharidda's life force, a sound so deep it was felt more than heard. It was a cathedral of living flesh and light. During a moment of rest in a wide grotto, Kharidda touched one of the glowing veins on the wall. "For generations we have listened to the song of this place," she said, her voice soft in the echoing chamber. "It has been our guide, our mother, our world. But lately, the song has been dissonant, filled with pain. Grax believes it is a punishment. I believe it is a cry for help." Rusty sat on a crystalline outcrop, checking the power cell on his multi-tool. "Sometimes a cry for help sounds a lot like a call to arms," he said, his gaze distant. He was quiet for a moment, the weight of his past pressing in on him in the intimate darkness. "I was a marshal once, a long time ago, on a terraforming colony called Praxis. Good people, farmers, engineers, built the place from dust." He'd never told this story to anyone, not even Betsy. But here, in the heart of a living world with this serene, silver-eyed woman, the words came unbidden. A corporate raider, a real piece of work named Rulok, wanted the planet's mining rights. He started pushing the colonists, trying to scare them off. They looked to me to stand up to him. He paused, the memory twisting like a knife. "I told them to fight. I drew up plans, organized a militia. But Rulok's enforcers were professionals. The colonists were scared. Their elders preached caution, appeasement. They voted to negotiate, to cede the rights. They chose the easy way." His voice dropped to a low, gravelly whisper. "I was young, arrogant. I told them they were fools and that I wouldn't stay to watch them lose their homes. So I left. I just packed my things and left them to it. the broken promise. He had promised to protect them, and when they didn't listen, he'd abandoned them. A week later, from a starport 2 systems away, he heard the news. Rulok had broken the treaty, taken everything, and burned the settlement to the ground. There were no survivors. Kharidda moved to sit beside him, her presence a quiet comfort. She didn't offer platitudes or absolution. She simply listened. "The weight of that promise has shaped the man you are now," she said, her perception cutting straight to the heart of him. "It is why you stayed, why you are here." He looked at her, at the genuine empathy in her silver eyes, and felt a crack appear in the thick stone wall he'd built around his heart. He hadn't realized how heavy his solitude was until this moment, when someone else was willing to help him carry it. He reached out, his calloused thumb gently tracing one of the silver markings on her cheek. The touch was electric, a bridge between 2 vastly different souls in the center of a dying world. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the lifeblood of Kharidda, something unspoken passed between them. It wasn't just a fleeting attraction. It was a deep, resonant connection, a recognition of the shared burdens of leadership and the pain of a world in turmoil. The deep thrumming of the creature around them suddenly intensified, shaking the ground. A shower of glowing spores rained down from the ceiling. "We are close," she whispered, pulling away reluctantly. "The heart chamber is just ahead." They emerged into a cavern that dwarfed all the others. It was a massive, vaulted dome of pulsating flesh, crisscrossed with thick, artery-like conduits that glowed with a fiery red light. And there, embedded in the far wall like a cancerous tumor, was the mining probe. It was bigger than he'd thought, a 10-meter-long cylinder of corroded metal, its drills buried deep in a mass of blackened, dying tissue. A malevolent red light pulsed from its core, in a sickening counter-rhythm to the steady beat of Kharidda's life. "All right," Rusty said, his voice all business now. "Stay back. That thing's probably putting out some nasty radiation." He began the treacherous climb across the pulsing floor toward the probe. As he got closer, a low hum became audible, the sound of ancient machinery still relentlessly performing its poisoned task. He pulled out his multi-tool and found an external access panel on the probe's casing. It was sealed tight with age and corrosion. As he worked to pry it open, the old blues tune from his cockpit echoed softly in his mind, a familiar rhythm in the face of the unknown. Stormy Monday. But Tuesday is just as bad. A sudden shout from Kharidda ripped him from his concentration. "Rusty, look out!" He spun around just as Grax launched himself from a hidden tunnel entrance, his crystal blade held high. He must have followed them. 2 of his warriors were right behind him. "Blasphemer!" Grax roared, his face a mask of zealotry. "You will not defile the heart of this world." Rusty drew his plasma pistol in a blur of motion, firing a warning shot that exploded against the cavern wall near Garax's head. "Stay back, Garax. This isn't about gods, it's about a machine. Let me shut it down." But Garax was beyond reason. He charged, his blade a blur of obsidian light. Rusty met his charge, not with a weapon, but with his body. He sidestepped the wild swing and slammed his shoulder into the larger Xylari, sending him stumbling back. The warriors moved to flank him, but Kharidda, ignoring her own safety, placed herself between them. "Stop!" she commanded, her voice ringing with newfound power. "Can you not feel it? His presence here is not the cause of Kharidda's pain. It is the answer to it. He fights for our world while you fight for your pride." Her words gave Rusty the opening he needed. He turned his back on the fight, an act of supreme trust in her, and focused on the panel. With a final desperate wrench, the panel tore open with a screech of metal. Inside was a chaotic nest of wiring and a central power conduit, glowing with the same sick red light. He could hear the sounds of the fight behind him, the clash of crystal and Kharidda's desperate pleas. There was no time for finesse. He set his multi-tool to overload and jammed it into the conduit. "Everybody get down!" he roared. As Garax threw Kharidda aside and lunged at him, Rusty triggered the overload. A blinding arc of energy erupted from the probe. The red light flickered, sputtered, and died. The low hum of the machine ceased, plunging the cavern into an almost absolute silence, broken only by the deep, steady beat of Kharidda's heart. The creature gave one last, violent convulsion, a final shudder of a body purging a poison. A section of the ceiling above Kharidda cracked and broke loose, a massive chunk of crystalline flesh plummeting towards her. Without a second's thought, Rusty moved. He crossed the space in 2 great strides, shoving her clear and taking the full impact of the falling debris on his own broad back and shoulders. He grunted in pain as the immense weight drove him to one knee, but he held. He did not break. He shielded her, finally fulfilling the promise he had broken so long ago. When the dust settled, Grax and his warriors were gone, having fled in the chaos. Rusty slowly rose, shrugging off the debris, his back a wall of aching muscle. He looked at Kharidda, her silver eyes wide with awe and concern. The heart of Kharidda was already beginning to heal. The black necrotic tissue around the dead probe was receding, replaced by the healthy blue glow of new life. His work was done. Back on the surface, under the faint light of the expanse, the air felt cleaner, the world's heartbeat stronger. He stood by the ramp of his skiff as Kharidda approached, her limp already less pronounced. "Kharidda sings again," she said softly. "It is a song of gratitude, of healing. Our world is saved because of you." She reached out and took his hand. "Stay, Rusty Vance. This is a world of peace. You could have a home here. You would not have to be alone." The offer was a balm on his weary soul. A home, peace, a beautiful, serene woman who saw the honor beneath his rugged shell. It was everything a man like him could ever want, and for that very reason he knew he couldn't accept. He gently squeezed her hand and then released it. "My road doesn't have a destination, Kharidda," he said, his voice thick with a bittersweet ache. "The running, the wandering, it's who I am." He gave her a small, sad smile. "But for the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm running away from my ghosts. I'm just riding on. And that's thanks to you." He turned and walked up the ramp without looking back, because if he looked back, he knew he might never leave. The ramp hissed shut, and a moment later, the mule lifted off, rising into the starless black. Kharidda watched until the skiff was just a dwindling light, a man-made star returning to the void. She did not feel sorrow, but a deep, profound peace. He had left her world whole, and in doing so had healed a piece of his own soul. He was a forager, a wanderer, the last of an old breed, and his promise this time had been kept in starlight. True redemption isn't found in erasing the past, but in facing a new challenge with the wisdom learned from old failures. A man's honor is not defined by the promises he broke, but by the ones he chooses to keep, especially when it costs him everything. The road is long and lonely, but it's better when we travel together. If this story touched you, subscribe and share it with a friend who appreciates the old code of honor.